Evolution.org, episode 644 is coming your way. So we're going to talk about, we're going to talk with EVO logger MarkNV, the transformation. And in this one, he's going to share really his entire life from childhood up to where he is now. And it's really a fascinating thing because a lot of you out there may have experienced this or you may be experiencing this. I mean, we have people of all ages that listen to this show. So this is a great episode to have and share with other people. And, as human beings, we put each other through so much trauma. And it's been like that since the beginning of time. They found a mummified remains of someone buried up in the mountains of Italy. And this person had an arrow in his back. And this was, I don't know, 5, 10, 15,000 BC, something like that. So it just shows you that humans have been nasty to each other, killing each other, saying stuff to each other and violent towards each other since for thousands and tens of thousands of years, millions of years since we've been around. And it's, we live in a society now where we're supposed to be above that. We're not supposed to be knuckle draggers anymore. So, but it still happens every fucking day. Living in an apartment complexes over my life, I heard it. I heard the abuse. I heard the screaming. I heard the hitting. I heard the banging. So it happens no matter what. And this is going to be a really good episode. This is one you're going to want to share with your people out there. So Mark is really gracious to come on and talk about this and really touch as many people as he can on this episode. So let me remind everyone first, though, we are on Apple, we are on Spotify. I really want to encourage you to smash the like button, subscribe on as many of the platforms as possible, leave comments and all that good stuff. That helps the algorithms pick up our show. So first of all, we got Mark. Thank you for coming on again. How you doing this morning?
Steve, I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me, and thank you, Mobster, as well. How are you
Yep.
guys doing?
Good, good.
All good.
Awesome.
We won't mention the pre-show.
Mobster, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, look, Steve's already said it, and of course I said it on the previous show. I think, especially in light of what we're hoping to talk about today, Mark, having you back on and having you talk about some of the things that we're going to talk about, I hope and I want that the things that we're going to talk about will help you a little bit. Obviously, you're going to learn, as you did, obviously, already from what's happened and understand that. And that should hopefully teach others, as we've done on a few of these shows, by having people become comfortable. I mean, fucking hell, Mark, I did a show the other day where I was almost upset myself. So, but putting that stuff out there, not being fucking uber macho or whatever else, it's difficult for some people. And hopefully what we're going to talk about today will touch some people, remind some people that, these things happen, but we can move forward and that we can learn from these experiences. And as I said on other shows, if we help one or two people in this particular regard, then we've done a great job. And so thank you so much for coming on today and being willing to get involved in this particular way. We'll start, I think, a little bit. Mark.
Thank you very much, Mobster.
That's all right, mate. Let's start a little bit just with an update of from the last show. We've obviously got stuff that you and I and Steve are going to talk about, but let us know where you are in regards to your journey so far from the last show in terms of training, progress, etc. in the gym, and usual stuff that we talk about on EVO before we get into the proper meat and potatoes of today's episode. So give us an update.
Well, I'd love to share this. I'm going through something in the gym I've never really gone through before, and people are telling me it's a recomp. I'm burning fat, but I'm not losing weight. I'm sitting at like 243 to 248, fluctuating right in there, but I've lost like 2 inches on my waist. And it's really weird. I've never experienced that before. It feels really good. It absolutely feels really good, and my training's gotten better. And the trainer I use has really paid a lot of attention to a lot of the ailments I have in my whole body. And she's come up with great workarounds. And I don't think that my workouts have ever been better. I had one the other day doing legs, and that at the very end, we were doing like extensions and then heel elevated body weight squats. 20 reps on the extensions to failure on every body weight squat. And I did that 4 times. And the very last one, I have never experienced this. I went down. I wasn't getting up. And next thing I know, I'm like literally sprawled across the extension machine. I was holding onto it. And I almost had an emotional response to that. It was a release. I have
Yeah.
never felt before, man. I wanted to cry, but I wanted to laugh.
Yeah.
And it was just like I was dripping wet.
I've joked, Mark, that I'm not at all religious, but a good training session is one where you see a little Jewish fella at the end of a long tunnel with a bright light giving a gun come towards the light, and you go, "I'm not religious, but what the fuck's going on here?" So that's a good training session right there. When you absolutely you know in your bones that you've trained your ass off.
There was nothing left, bro. There was just nothing left. And it was the best feeling in the world. Now I see her again Wednesday morning. I can't wait to get in there. We're gonna do back and buys and some light shoulders. I'm gonna do it again. I I've never taken myself to that spot. That was just intense. That was great.
It feels great,
I,
especially when you accomplish it, you know?
Well,
I
it
made
kind
a
of
note.
came with a time too, where it's been a rough week. Um, I shared a little bit on the
Yeah.
forum. It's been a rough week, and that was kind of the culmination of it. And it was gone when that happened. It was gone.
Yes, yes. This is the thing I touched on this on the show the other day, guys, where I said if you train in the morning, and I believe you train silly o'clock in the morning, Mark.
Yes,
One of the
it
things
was.
is the idea of that is in a perverse way that you've done the hardest part of your fucking day, or even as you just described, the hardest part of your fucking week, and it puts the other thing, the other stuff, the other hard parts of your week into the shade by comparison because he goes, listen, I've nearly had a fucking religious experience here. I'm on the ground trying not to puke and whatever else, and it makes the other things seem smaller, the other stresses seem smaller. So that's absolutely awesome. I did make a note here, and I'm actually going to ask you a little bit about this now. This will probably a little bit of history for the listeners. Someone was asking something, and your reply, and I can't remember the question. Your reply was, "No, ha ha ha, Navy helicopter squadron," and then you get into the rough growing up, which we're going to talk about. And grew up splitting wood all summer for heat and shoveling snow in winter. Talk about, I mean, bearing in mind the training that we just said and how hard that fucking was. Some of the Army, Navy training, helicopter stuff, which involves, I believe, your Navy, you'd have had to have gone in the sea and all that kind of shit. That can be crazy tough as well. So talk a little bit about that because that's part of your growing up as well.
Well, the Navy part, I wouldn't. I was ready for that. I actually wanted to be something different in the Navy, but I passed a bunch of tests and I got this rating where I worked in electronics, so to speak, sonar with these helicopters. They were for anti-submarine warfare. So I never got to go through any of the like SEER school or flight deck swimming school or rescue
Mm.
swimmer or buds or any of that. I wanted to, but I had some previous disqualifying stuff, so I
Yeah.
couldn't. And so I made the best of it, and it was okay. And I trained hard for boot camp. I went through boot camp like a breeze. I was,
Mm.
I was at the end of a 6 year wrestling career at that point. So boot camp to me was like,
Can you
a
share
thousand, a
can
thousand burpees. Fuck you, okay.
Yep. Can you share your rank? What you
Yeah, I
achieved?
was E3. I never went past E3. I got in trouble.
Oh, okay. So that's basically
Yeah,
like an enlisted person. You weren't
yeah, I
like
was
an
just an
On,
officer.
enlisted
Okay.
person.
on
Just
the
an enlisted.
wrestling thing, I remember seeing some documentary a million years ago when I was much younger about American high school and college type wrestling. And I seem to recall that was also fucking stupidly brutal, especially if you were trying to make weight and super hard and probably one of the hardest things you can do at school. Talk a little bit about the wrestling as well. That's just my memory. Maybe I'm wrong. It's the way that it was
Oh
played in the
yeah, it was
documentary.
rough. Mobster, it was rough. I started in sixth grade. We didn't worry about weight too much then, but the moment you hit freshman in high school, you're having to make
Mm.
weight for big tournaments. Even intermediate school a little bit, but mostly in high school. That's when it got serious.
Yeah.
And
I went through
I
it
was
too. Yeah.
I was 6'1" by the time I reached ninth grade, and I
Yes,
wrestled
yes.
181s. Well, 181s and heavyweights were all kind of combined because
Yeah.
you know
You're wrestling a guy who's like 5'8", 5'9", who's that weight sometimes,
yeah, exactly.
with
Or
way more
more. Yeah,
muscle
yeah.
than you because of their
Yes.
height.
Yeah,
So guys like me, we're more stocky, you know. So if I'm going up against a 6 foot person, wrestling or weight training, it's an advantage to me just because I can hold way more weight and I'm a lot shorter. So that definitely makes a difference. So yeah, so let's take a step back, Mark. So first of all, with Mark, I didn't mention at the beginning of the show, but if you want to check him out on the forum, top right search button, search by member Mark NV as in Nevada, which is the initials for Nevada, and you can bring up his posts, and in his posts are his logs in his signature, and you can bring up the current log that he's working on, and in the log on page let's see here. It's page 20. He made a post talking about his childhood. And he started out talking about saying, my mother took up with a man after her and father divorced. At first, he seemed like an okay guy. I was 6 and didn't know the difference. So, Mark, take it from there. What changed with this guy to turn him a different way, you think? And tell us what happened here.
You know, that's a really good question. And I've thought about that. And I never could come up with an answer adequate enough to really explain any of the things that happened.
Was he like faking being nice just to win your mom
I
over?
think, well,
That's what it was.
I had an experience about 6 years ago, and I won't lie, I was doing a little bit of mushrooms, and I went into it for, I don't know, I wanted to call it like a vision quest, so to speak. I was in search of something, and he came to me. He's been dead for years. Unfortunately, I never got my hands on him when I got older, but he came to me in this, and then I realized that the things he was doing to me was because I was everything as a child he could never be with his parents. I had a great relationship with my mother. Yeah, my mother and father divorced, but we all had a great relationship. My father was wonderful, and so was my mom, and he never had that. All he had was ridicule and abuse, and he hated himself for that as a child. So that's what I came later on to understand was it wasn't me, it was
Yeah.
this man and his issues and his problems from his childhood and growing up, and he wanted to destroy something he wasn't. And he
Yeah.
came pretty freaking close, man. And it was about 40% physical. The rest of it was all emotional, mental,
Yeah. Yeah.
verbal,
Mm.
Yeah.
psychological.
As
And
much as it might suck, can you be specific? Because we had Noah on, and
I will.
Noah said he got locked in the closet, like, and he was like 4 or 5 years
Yeah.
old. He got locked in the closet, like you locking a kid in the dark closet at 4 or 5 years old. That's
Terrifying.
horrible. That's traumatic.
Terrifying.
Do you want to like
This,
be
Yeah.
more specific as to the abuse that
well, I remembered some things. A lot of the stuff, it's come to me over the years. I'm 60 now, and this is, when it started when I was 6 and went to 14. And it got less the bigger I got. Imagine that. Um, I remembered there was a thing my mother signed me up for, like Taekwondo. It was called, I remember what it was called. It was some kind of form of Kung Fu, and it was in town. I wanted to try it as a kid. Boy, oh boy, when I came home from my first lesson, he grabbed me and yelled at me, I don't care what you know or what you'll ever know. I'll always be able to kick your ass. I'm like 6 years old.
what the fuck?
I know.
What the
Yeah.
hell?
Man.
I know. And so I didn't do that for very long. The next day in our cul-de-sac, we lived in a little cul-de-sac. And so I was friends with all the kids, right? There's just children all over the cul-de-sac. We played baseball until the lights went out at night in the summer. That's, it was old in the early 70s. He made me go pick a fight with every single kid in that cul-de-sac to show everybody I was the toughest kid in that cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
And then it came to an end when the neighbor girl kicked my ass all over the place for beating up her brother. And
Yeah.
and I never really understood the
I don't
significance.
get it. Like looking back, what is the reason for that? Like
I
what
don't
why
know.
did he
It's got, Steve, sounds to me like massive insecurity. I literally got
yeah.
thrown out of the house one night by my dad because we'd had a fight down the pub and I'd had to go to hospital and get my eyes stitched. And the one and only time I ever demonstrated my strength to my dad had literally, it had all kicked off on a Sunday afternoon with a few people, myself included, had all had a drink and everybody but me was fighting, including my dad with my brothers. And I had to pull them apart and pin my dad to the wall. And I literally didn't look him in the eye. I didn't make eye contact while I was doing it because I didn't want to turn into that kind of person. So as I said, he would not have us fighting. He would not have us be violent for that kind of reason and threw me at the house if we're going to be the kind of people that are fighting down a pub. Think about it the other way around because that's what we're talking about here. This person is saying, go out and fight, go out and prove you're the dominant, and all the rest of it. That is, to me, that's huge, huge, huge insecurity. And like Mark says, that's coming from his shitty background. And the joke here is, and I say that word loosely, we try sometimes with those situations, and I think Mark's proof of this pudding, to not be or not make the mistakes that our parents have made. But here, as Mark is demonstrating, his stepdad is precisely making the same fucking mistakes because he doesn't know any better. But Mark, you do. You're proof that you don't need to be like that. You're proof that you know better and you understand. Maybe you never understood, but you had the insight. You understand. That I think is what we want to talk about a little bit today. For anybody that's struggling in this particular way, to understand you don't need to be like that. You don't need to be that person. And if you do get insight like Mark has,
Yeah.
you can change shit.
Because I'm looking at this, and one of the reasons is insecurity, mobster, like you said, but also
Yes.
another one, I think it's more in this situation is competition with their son. So I think after he went to the martial arts,
Six,
it
for fuck's
freaked
sake.
him up. It freaked him out because he's like, oh my God, I don't want this kid that grew up to be better than me and be
Yes.
able to fight me. You know what I'm saying? Do you think that's what it was?
It could have been. It could have. That you just brought up a very good point I've never really thought about before. Um, and
Because he's
that's
already
that could
upset that
very
you
well
have a
be.
good relationship with your mom and stuff, and then he didn't
Yeah.
have that, and you
Right.
may be popular around with the kids in the neighborhood, so he viewed that as like, wow, this kid's better than I was at that age, so I gotta basically I gotta knock him down a few pegs. Maybe that's what it is, you know?
He sure did. But what it created later is, yeah, you're right, mobster. You brought out a good point. I didn't want to be that, but I didn't realize that for a lot of years.
Mm.
And even to this day, there's still issues that pop up. And I'll never make an excuse about my upbringing causing this or my upbringing causing that, because every time you do something, it's a choice and a decision. And
Yes.
and I still make bad mistakes, bad mistakes.
My, my,
But
my,
growing,
my, my my daughter's a better parent than I will ever be. And sometimes I own this shit. I've literally, it's been useful at times to be that person when I've needed to in certain situations, ironically, to actually help my daughter and the grandkids and my girlfriend at the time. But that's not something I want to be proud about. That's not something I want to be on a regular basis. And that's the
right,
thing. Be the beast when you need to be the beast, but don't be the fucking beast all the fucking time, and then you just become an arsehole. So yeah. But again, as you said, why do you think maybe this is a better question, Steve? Why did it take you so fucking long, Mark? That's probably a good question.
oh, that's a really good question. I think it took me to the point where I
I'm
got
only a
married.
year older than you, Mark, and we're
I
still fucking learning. You know what I mean?
I got married at 28, and up until then, I ran wild pretty good, And I got married to a woman who had two kids, and I just was bound and determined not to repeat those same type of things. But
Yeah.
earlier in life, man, I was a fighter. But I didn't fight for the reasons that this man would make me go out and raise hell
Yes.
with other kids. There were
Yes.
different reasons. When I moved from Lake Tahoe to Salt Lake to finish high school because it was not working in Lake Tahoe anymore. It wasn't that poor guy that my mother married, her third husband, which is still her man, and they've
Yeah.
been married for 50 years since I was 14. When she left, dude, she met a wonderful man. That poor guy had to put up with a very pissed off 14-year-old kid
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the more poor man had no idea what he got himself into. And he was a trooper, and he's turned out to be just a wonderful man in life to me, my sister, my kids, and everybody. And but when I went to Salt Lake, I was still very, very angry. I was an angry 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid finishing up
Mm.
high school. And the first person I met was a kid that had a locker next to my sister. His name was Greg, and he was gay. He was so gay. And I came up in California, shit didn't bother me, but I went to Utah, rednecks, and this poor kid suffered every single
Yeah.
day.
They have a lot of Mormons over
A lot of
there.
well, it's the
Yeah.
rednecks, and the cowboys, a lot of
Yeah.
Mormons, and this was 1980, well, 1982,
Yeah.
80, 82, and so life was a lot different out there. And I wasn't having it, man. I watched this guy get bullied right in the locker next to me. I'm opening my locker up and I'm looking at Greg, and that's when Greg became my friend. And I took Greg under my wing,
Good
and I
for
think I
you.
got in a
Yeah.
fight once or twice a week. Every party, every weekend, I got in a fight
Yeah. So you
defending
kind of
him.
you kind of turned into like the person, the defender, where
Yes.
you're instead of being the bully and bullying that poor kid who was already suffering enough, he
Or,
can't
or,
help
or,
it,
or just or just
you
plain
know?
good old fashioned ignoring it and just
Yeah.
dealing with your own
Some
shit,
people
which is
had to
being
ignore it. I
invincible.
had to ignore if I saw something like that because I was a little 5'6", 112 pound kid. I couldn't do
Yeah,
anything to defend someone. But one of the things I'd have to do is use my brain in those situations. But that's great
Yes.
that you turn into that person. But I want to kind of touch on a little bit. We talked about it on the last podcast we did with Noah, well, which was Pogo the Clown. And you mentioned it too in your post where you talk about how your dad would would basically call you a sissy, the F
Oh
word,
yeah.
pussy boy, and all this stuff because you were playing sissy sports or whatever. So Pogo the Clown, which is John Wayne Gacy, he grew
Yeah.
up abused by his father, and he used to do this. His dad wanted him to go outside and fight the kids in the neighborhood and wrestle with the kids in the neighborhood, and he Pogo the Clown liked to do things like cooking and reading and stuff like that. I think he was a high IQ serial killer. And
Yeah.
his dad would beat him relentlessly because of that. And he grew up very, very angry. So now, as an adult, he turned around and used that anger to torture kids the same way his dad used to torture him. And he's killed well over 30 kids. I think some people think he killed like 80 or 100 people as an adult, as a serial killer. And that's one of the things where we talked about it with Noah. So in the end, like you guys listening out there, I want you guys who are parents and step parents and all this stuff to just realize that when you abuse your kids and you physically or emotionally, you're creating that becomes a cycle. And when they get older, they can that extreme part of it, they can end up being a serial killer. Like every serial killer grew up being abused in some way. So, or they got abused. Even if they grew up in a perfect household, they may have gotten abused. They may have been walking down the street and got snatched up and raped, or something, or some person exposed themselves to them, or something like that. It could have been a sexual thing, or emotional, or physical. So, at the end of the day, like when you victimize someone, who's a
Yeah.
child like that, you can damage them, forever. So you run the risk of them growing up and being worse than you were. So just think about that. Those of you listening to this who may be in a situation where you're about to become a father, or you're about to become a stepdad, you're dating someone who has a kid. I dated someone with a 5-year old, and I would have protected that kid with every fucking fiber of my being and never
Yeah.
let anyone fuck with that kid. If someone fucked with that kid, if I found out someone fucked with that kid or bullied that
Yes,
kid or
indeed.
nothing, I would have went
Indeed.
and
Yeah.
fucking killed the motherfuckers. That's
Yeah.
what you need
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be. So Mark, it's good that Mark, you didn't continue that cycle, that you went
Right.
another way and
Yeah.
you became a protector as an adult. So what do you think? What do you think caused you not to go down the Pogo the Clown route and actually go as a protector even later in high school?
I still knew right from wrong.
Okay.
My mother raised me right. She raised me with compassion and empathy. And she, you know, she she has a hard time when we talk about this particular subject because she doesn't never. She's kind of like in a disbelief thing. She didn't really know what was going on. She was a working mom too. Um, I didn't really share a whole bunch at the time. She did the best that she could given what she had, and but she raised me right. She just raised me right.
Touch on a little bit too. A lot of people like to victim blame, like they'll blame your mother for
No,
getting with a guy who's a piece of shit. But what happens is a lot of times, I don't think people realize this out there, that a lot of times mothers who are single like that, they have no choice. Like they have no choice. Like what are the options? What are the
right.
options? Being homeless. There's not enough like women's shelters out there where they can take their kids. It's really, really sad. This is actually something that I would love to do one day, is open up like more of these shelters for women. I wish the rich fucktards, in our country, the billionaires would, instead of, spending their own money on private jets and stuff, I wish they would do shit like this. I wish they would do shit like this.
I'll
Open
tell you
up
something else that occurs to
places
me,
like
Steve.
that.
What
But like at the end of the day, I
what?
don't want people out there who've never experienced this to just
Yeah.
victim blame and be like, oh, it's the mom's fault. Because at the end of the day, you have no fucking choice.
No.
The cost of living is so ridiculous that what are you supposed to do in this situation? And they're feared that for themselves, they're feared for their kids that this guy is going to do something if they leave them at the same time. So Mark, maybe touch on that a little bit, and then Monster, I'll let you
Well,
talk about that too.
he was a slick man. Neil was very charming. He had a great job, a great job in the '70s, and he did very very well. And all of a sudden, there he is living more of a metropolitan lifestyle. He comes in, and mom was really taken away, swept off her feet. The guy at the time drove a '68 Jag convertible, kept it in the garage with a nameplate on it, part of the Jaguar Club, and he was high up in a particular railroad, and we lived really, really well, and all that's very, very attractive. And
She
It
thought she
just,
was providing for you
yes,
by doing that,
exactly,
you know,
exactly,
and
exactly.
that's and it was to a certain extent, but maybe she wasn't, there was nothing really she could. Maybe was she aware of the abuse
I
or
don't think that she really was either that or
yeah,
she just didn't want to know. All I know,
yeah,
it was a different time and a different era.
exactly, yeah,
And, a lot of things were different then. And people looked at things a lot different than they do now. I'll never hold blame on anybody for that. It could be just bad luck. Fate is weird like that. Life is weird. It'll hand you shit you're not expecting, whether you're a kid or you're an adult.
yeah.
And it's just how it works
He
sometimes.
seemed like he's very manipulative, where he
Oh,
made it seem like he was this great, perfect guy. And at the end of the day, it was just all fake. He was a
all
phony
fake.
from the start. And then
He was charmed.
that's the thing. Yeah. You can't
He was
blame someone for believing in that because that's what you're seeking. A lot of women who have single kids, they're gonna and want to seek someone who's successful, has a house and everything because they want that security. So it's like what she's seeking is there, but it's actually it's a facade, and he did a great job of that being
oh
manipulative.
he was very, 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 very good. But we made it through it, and she got us. And she moved out when he cheated on her, and that kind of all came to a head. And she moved us to Tahoe, where her family what were living, and that's where we were at. And then our life was really good. It wasn't for me. I was still pissed off, but I was pissed off all the way through the Navy.
Yeah.
I got in so much
So
trouble
what
for
did you talk because
drinking.
you talk about it in this post as well. You say you apologize. You mentioned that earlier. You apologized to the next guy she married, right?
Later in life, I was
Yeah.
it was
So what did you
just
do to this guy? What
oh
was he like? Tell us what he was like, because a lot of people out there maybe in a situation where they're getting in the dating game again after a divorce or later in life. Like me, I'm in my mid 40s. If I got back in the dating scene, I would probably be dating someone who was divorced with a kid or two kids or something. So I would what how should a man like this guy who seems like a real man, how should he
Yeah.
be acting toward his stepkids that was different than that? And what did you put him through that was a negative situation that he handled in
well,
a certain way?
everything. He came in, and when I think back about it, he came in very, very meek and mild and nice. He thought he was going to save this woman, and he did save my mother, so to speak. But he also thought he was going to be saving Chris, my sister, and I, and we weren't having it. We went through a lot. Just recently went through a lot. This was really quick, a quick transition for my mother, and I put this guy through. I wouldn't listen to him. I snuck out of the house. I was 14 years old, jumping out my window at night, and he would lock the window. He'd check on me and see if I was gone. He would lock the window, and then I wouldn't come home for
Yeah.
4 days. Be like,
Yeah.
lock the
Now
fucking
you can
window.
put
I
up
don't.
a camera, to
Yeah,
see if this kid's sneaking
like who
out or
cares?
not.
I didn't care. I stayed away, and we got into confrontations. I didn't take to his authority very well. I was out not getting in trouble. Well, I can't say I wasn't getting in trouble. I was just a smart kid, and I never got caught. We did a lot. I was involved with a lot of drugs at that time up in Tahoe, buying, selling, collecting money. It was just absolutely insane. If I had not left for Salt Lake, I probably would have been dead along with half the friends I was running around with because it was small town Lake Tahoe at the time. It was just a mountain resort. That was it. Ski. It was a ski bowl.
Did they have gambling back then, or is that
Oh
something
yeah,
that
they
came
did.
later?
There was
Okay.
a lot of cocaine at Lake Tahoe at the
Oh.
time. Now it's
Drugs and
heroin,
gambling, huh? And
drugs and
hookers.
gambling,
And
and
hookers,
there
right?
and there was a lot of money helping
Yeah.
the cocaine guy next door collect his money. There was a lot of money in that when you were 16 at
Yeah.
6'1" and not caring about a damn thing in life, honestly.
Mm.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm sure glad I left there.
So how did this guy like deal with your, being, just this rebellious teenager? Did he just like, what was his way to kind of like deal with it? Where he's just like
Work,
putting up with it?
work. We split wood. He was a very self-sufficient man, and at the time you had to rely on burning wood in the summer. Well, everybody was on propane, those great big ass propane tanks,
Hmm.
because of where it was. You couldn't get gas up there, so everybody had propane. So they would ship propane into Lake Tahoe, and that's what you got once a winter. You fill up the tank, but it would go fast, and so you had to cut wood. He would get wood permits, and he would go out and cut 15, 20 cords of wood a year, and that was my job to split it by hand.
Oh, okay. So you guys did that together?
Well, he used the chainsaw and I swung the frickin'
Okay.
splitting
So it was
ball.
like kind of team. It was like a teamwork thing between you and him.
Yeah, so to speak. So to
Yeah.
speak. He got the easy job. I got the hard one. And I always
Yeah.
resented him for that until later on in
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And then I was the one responsible for making sure stuff was clean in the winter so we could get in and out. And it was no joke.
Yeah.
There was times like,
I'm just thinking you don't realize that you're actually learning something at that time. At the time, it feels like, why the fuck am I
No.
going to help this
Yeah.
fella? But when you get older, you suddenly realize this time together with a parental figure or paternal figure, in this case, with a father figure, even if it's just working and not having man to man life decision type conversations, you're actually sharing time in that particular regards. You haven't got the maternal figure that's off to one side somewhere. You're doing quote unquote manly type work, which is needed. And you suddenly, when you look back, you think, hang on, I've helped my dad with, I mean, I can't decorate to save my fucking life.
It's the best
But
way to
helping
spend
my
time
dad,
together.
yeah,
it's
exactly. And not only that, if it's difficult conversation, you don't even have to have a fucking conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a great
If you
way to
do,
get to
that's
know each
great.
other. Yeah.
Yeah,
I wish I
exactly.
would
If you
have
do have the
appreciated it then.
conversations,
I
yes,
wish I would have
yeah.
appreciated that
But
back
you
then.
do, you appreciate it
Now I
now,
do.
Mark, because
Now I do.
yes, exactly.
And I
Because
told him how
even
much I loved him.
look, if I was a teenage boy and I never had that kind of fucking relationship with my dad, at the same time, I mean, I'll be out with my mates or out playing football or out fucking kicking a boat or just chilling and watching the TV. This is work. Why do I want to do work? I'm a teenager. Fuck this shit. But the reality is, you go back 20, 10, 15, 20 years and you go, hang on, even if I spend off, not the same thing with my daughter now, if I spend time, I'm a fucker for not doing those things. But when I do it, I realize the value of it. So looking back, as you're doing now, as we're doing in this conversation, you look back and you go, hang on, actually, do you know what? There was a value. And it was and not only that, Mark, compared to the fucking shit from before, it was fucking gold. Because
Gold.
what you got before was nothing. You got abuse. Now you're just having time with a bloke and you're cutting wood and chopping wood and whatever else. And the biggest, most resentful part of that afternoon is he's got the chainsaw and you got the axe. That's the
Yep.
worst part about that conversation. So yeah, it's valuable in a way that perhaps some people don't understand or realize.
He taught me how to finish what I start.
Hmm.
That's
And
a
I
good
didn't
one.
even realize that. I had no idea because if we didn't finish what we started every year, we were going to be cold or we weren't going
Yeah.
to eat or
How
we weren't
how
going to be
cold
able
was
to
it? Did it get
uh,
there at night?
1982, the Christmas vacation from high school, it started snowing the first
Hmm.
day of Christmas vacation and didn't stop for 3 weeks.
嗯
3 weeks. Wow.
We were digging. We were basically landlocked. There was no groceries or anything coming
Mhm.
into Tahoe.
Was this
So
like
everything.
a snowstorm or something? A big
Oh yeah,
snowstorm?
yeah. Oh yeah. It was.
Was there
That's
is
what it
there a
was.
name for it where people can look this up? The big
No,
just
no.
the
Just
it's just like a big Lake Tahoe snowstorm of
big old
1982,
Lake Tahoe
maybe?
snowstorm up in the Sierras.
Yeah.
Steve, I believe there's winter archive photographs of where I am, well before I came up here, where in the street outside people's houses, it was 6 foot deep on the top of people's
Yeah.
cars and up against a door. So even here in the valleys of South Wales, the early 80s, if you guys are talking about 81, 82, they had the very same thing. So I'm assuming it was like possibly a global phenomenon at the time, not just there,
Hmm.
but obviously worse in some places than others. So, yeah.
I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah,
That
there was
sounds
some
crazy. Yeah.
serious. You look at Truckee. That's just part of Tahoe, just a few miles out of the North Shore, and it has some
So
of the largest snowfall, deepest snowfall in the United States.
yeah. So 3 weeks of snow, you couldn't go anywhere. How old were
No,
you when this was happening?
well, it was
Okay.
1982. I
So
was
what do you
six,
guys do for three
17.
weeks? Just try to get as much
Shovel,
You'd be 16, yeah.
just
You'd be 16, huh?
shovel.
you have food like hold
Yeah.
up in the house in
Oh yeah,
case.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You prepare all summer for this because you never
Okay.
know when it's. There's
Yeah.
going to
Gotcha.
be at least one storm up there through the winter that is going to sock you in for 2 weeks
Okay.
because there's only two ways into Tahoe that are open in the winter. You got 80, and then they come in through 395, and then you got 50 coming
And if
in over that. On only one of them, a truck is going to go over with supplies.
and if it's blocked, you're
That's it.
stuck.
You're stuck.
Yeah. And then when it comes to after the 3 weeks, then what do you guys do? Do you guys just the snow melts away or what happens to the
Well,
snow?
the roads start getting clear. The snow melts away a little bit. When and it's going to melt. Even if it warms up to 34 degrees, it's going to start melting,
Hmm.
and it just slowly settles down. It just life gets back to normal, but it's
Yeah.
rough.
So you guys got to prepare for that. Okay, gotcha, gotcha.
Always
I
preparing.
just think there's two things that come out of this. One is being prepared for this kind of shit, and the other one is you better be getting on with people because fucking 2 weeks in the house,
Yeah.
you can't physically go out and you're surrounded by snow.
No,
You need to be at that point okay with the fucking people that you're stuck in the house with.
mom,
You might be
mom and
family, but
John went
you're
to
there
work.
24/7. Yeah,
Mom and John
that's
still went
crazy.
to work. John
Wow.
and my mom parked his Ford Bronco down the hill off Gardner Mountain, where they were closer to Highway 50, in a parking lot at the 7-Eleven, and they would literally walk the mile and a half through the snow off Gardner Mountain to get down there so they can jump on and get to work where there actually was plows going through
Wow. Okay.
town.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
just
what
down the
people have to
cabin.
go through. Yeah, this is in living in
Well,
these mountain towns out west for sure. Yeah.
you know what though, and I'll tell you this: all that experience later on in life, I didn't realize later. After I got through with my addiction, the real stuff didn't start until after I got done with after I was addicted, and I had to literally rebuild. It was the experience with my first stepfather that gave me a chip that got me through that. It was the experience with my second stepfather that taught me how to not be afraid when it gets hard. You just
Yeah.
got to bite down and do it. And then it was the Navy that taught me that don't back down from a damn thing. If it's a challenge, use that challenge to learn from it, and
Yes.
don't be afraid of that obstacle. Get around that obstacle.
Yeah.
Figure
Yeah.
out a way.
Yeah.
And that's what got me through that. And it was after that I really started delving in. I didn't start delving inside myself until about 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And
So before we get to that, you mentioned here, you say you created a monster in me. For a lot of years, I was that
oh yeah,
Southern discharge guy. Someone would say something or look funny to me, and I would immediately go off and do whatever I could to literally destroy them. I wasn't a nice person. So what age would you say this was happening? And what was some of the bad things you did to others during this time?
all through high school, through the Navy, and probably the very early part. I got out of the Navy when I was 23, and the first couple years after the Navy, I was
So,
like that.
so what was the worst, like couple really bad stories that you did to someone? Was it beating them up? Was it
Usually, it
stabbing
was
them? What was
physical.
those?
No stabbing. I never tried to
Okay.
kill anybody physically or literally like
Okay.
that.
So what caused
But
the, tell us a couple of your worst fights. Like what caused it? Was it just something at a bar, like Mobster said earlier, or is it something else that happened that
I
really
could
set
be
you off?
sitting at a bar and I could be having a beer with my buddies in the Navy, and somebody could be sitting next to me and look at me and just look at me funny, down in the South, give me a
Yeah.
stupid look. And
Yeah.
I'd be like, what's your deal? And if they got wise,
Yeah.
well, I would start knocking teeth out before they could even move.
Jeez.
I just was just sudden. I just,
Yeah.
and it was a scary thing, and
Yeah. So
it
you were
was a
like a bully, almost like the
no, I
way that.
wouldn't go out. I wouldn't go out bullying people.
Okay.
I never picked on anybody I knew I could just trash.
Okay.
Oh,
Gotcha.
never, 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 never. There was always going to be a challenge to it. And there's a couple times I got the hell kicked out of my man. I got kicked around a bar in Florida, in Jacksonville, Florida, by some guy from Chicago. I don't remember it.
Talk
All my
about what
buddies told
happened
me,
there. What happened there? Was it
I don't
something?
know.
Oh, you
I
don't.
guess he was mouthing me across the bar, and I was laughing at him. I was all drunker than hell. And my buddy said
Yeah.
I got to walk around the bar, and the next thing he knew is my head was being used as a soccer ball all over the floor.
So what
And
happened with that? What happens in those situations with these bar fights? We hear a lot
I
of these stories. Like, did they just kick you out, the bartender? They call the cops? What
well,
happens
I was
usually?
dating. I was dating the bartender at the
Oh,
time. Her name
okay.
was Pam. All I remember is I woke up sitting at the bar with a beer in my hand and a cop next to me saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I kind of came to, and I'm like, "Yeah. What are you? Who are you?" And
So
my
what?
face was swelled out. I couldn't chew.
So
Yeah,
you
it was
got beat
rough.
up on that? Did that guy get arrested or what? How
I
did
have no
that?
idea. No, no, they walked out long before the cops showed up.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, nobody got arrested. Nobody
So
ever gets
you're,
arrested.
so your girlfriend at the time, she was the bartender. What was she doing during the whole
I don't
situation?
know.
Was she
I was.
screaming like, "Oh
I don't
my
know.
God, my boyfriend's getting beat up.
I
Someone
don't know.
help
I was
him."
getting my head kicked around.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
have no idea. I
Yeah.
have no idea.
Man.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely insane. But there was other times where it just would be like, just not handling communication well either. Wouldn't start
Yes.
swinging, but I would shut down internally. Something would come along. Somebody would hit me with something that I couldn't deal with emotionally and say
Yeah.
something to me, and I couldn't respond. I would just shut down. See, there was also that. That's a sudden discharge as well. That's a sudden discharge inward.
Would you
And
say would you say a lot of these guys who go to the bars, these tough biker bars like this, do you think they have this history where they were abused as children, where they're just looking for trouble, or do you think maybe they're using that as a kind of an outlet or depressant?
I think a little bit of both, a little
Yeah.
bit of all of that. I think that there's people out there with mental issues too that get involved with that stuff. And they get
Something you guys just both said. I mean, you both mentioned the communications thing. And listen,
yes,
we're doing this show, we're communicating, and we're not only to ourselves, but obviously to the listeners. And something I was reminded of as a quick side story in a pub, landlord's son, there's only me and him in the fucking pub. It's middle of the afternoon. And I thought, fuck, am I sitting down here? I was in one of the bars on my own. So fuck this, I'll go and sit up in the other bar. It's the only other person there. So landlord's son, big lump, kind of looks like I am today. Big boy, 280 pounds, probably my height. And you know, and I'm bigger than that now, but I wasn't that size then. And I'm doing a crossword. I do it in 5 minutes. I've done this crossword a million times. We're talking shit and whatever else. And at some point he said, and this kind of ties in with what you guys are talking about. He said, look at how quickly you did that. I said, oh, I've been doing this one for ages. You get to know the clues after a while. And then he said, I think I mentioned something about being taught to learn a word a day when I was doing one of my first jobs and something like that. And he said, my biggest problem, and he'd actually had a bit of a police record at that point, was I'll get into a situation and I can't talk my way out of it. And so instead of talking, I lash out. And it was kind of just me and him in the pub. His dad was down the other end polishing glasses or some shit. And it was just like a little moment for him to open up to me. He knew who I was, but we weren't buddies or nothing. And it was that little phrase of him not being able to verbalize. And instead of being able to say what was really meant, it would get stuck. He couldn't get the words out. And so he would just hit people instead. And that's why he kept getting into trouble with the police and getting arrested. And because he was a nice guy, he wasn't fucking going to jail, but he was still that struggle. I think for what you're saying, MarkNV, in a way, because obviously you could communicate now, the inability to, and almost not wanting to verbalize, not wanting to fucking talk about it. So fuck this shit, I'm just going to fight. And I rather than go out and sit there and talk and spill my guts and get my feelings out, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to have a fight. I'm going to look for someone. And even if I get my ass kicked, it's still going to be a good night because I won't have to deal with this shit. I won't have to talk about it. And even to yourself, which is again where we get the understanding from as we get older, understanding ourselves and being able to tell ourselves and talk to ourselves and just explain even to ourselves and then to people, then to partners and then to parents and then to whoever the fuck helps so fucking much. And again, that's what we're kind of doing on the show. So there's a little element of there for me with what you just said, both of you guys. It's funny, we could talk about this fighting shit all day long, but you get past that shit at some point, hopefully, and you get to understand yourself at some point, and you get to be able to talk this shit out and get it off your chest. It doesn't need to be a daily thing, listeners. It doesn't need to be all the fucking time, but it needs to be enough that you understand and you talk about it. And even if it's fucking emotional and hard, great, because actually that's super fucking cleansing. And it makes you grow up. It makes you arguably a better man. Am I getting anywhere kind of in that particular thought process, Mark?
you are, you
Yeah.
are, you are absolutely on it. You have to communicate. And it, Mobster, it doesn't matter how those words might taste in your mouth either. You have to learn how to verbalize it. If you can't get it out, nothing will ever get fixed. But you have to be smart about it too. I have learned something these last few years that's probably saved me several times,
Mm.
and it's called space. Now, in between stimulus and response, there is space.
Yes.
You can have that space be as small as you want, or you can be as big as you want. It's your space, and you're in control of that and how you respond.
Physically and verbally, Mark. Verbally, even just
Exactly.
having a few seconds, a pause, a step back. That's
Just
physical and verbal.
a
Just
breath.
having a moment to think about it and then go, hang on, do I really want to have this fight? Do I really want to do the stupid shit? Or can I walk the fuck away and not be worried about it?
So,
Or come back the next day. Sorry, just a great example here. Again, I think this is more for the benefit of listeners, especially online, guys, and especially listening to something like the show. there have been times, and I know I've been guilty of this 100% 2 or 3 times, where I've gone fucking red in the face and typed the fuck shit out and done stupid shit online. And then literally, and I know this for a fact because I know my personality now, if this happens outside, I will just wait 5 minutes. I will send you to the moon with your arse on fire at the beginning of those 5 minutes and piss on your ashes when they come back. But if you give me 5 minutes, I'm fucked. It's gone. I don't care anymore. I'm not that fussed anymore. So the space that Mark says, that's so fucking important here. Talk a little bit more about that, Mark, from your experience.
Well, when you're dealing with anger, depression turned inward is anger. And you can also remember that there's going to be maybe situations that trigger you where there really is no stimulus except for what's coming from inside your own head. So, what do
Yeah,
you do with that space? That's a different space because what are you responding to other than something that you have in your head? Marcus Aurelius has this thing. It's about hearing a knock on a door. You hear this knock on a door and it's dealing with fear, and you're just scared to death to open that door. You're not afraid to open the door, but you're afraid what might be on the other side. But what do you
yeah,
fear if you don't fucking know? And our brains will play games with us sometimes like that. And you got to learn to tell the difference because if you don't, nothing will ever get done. You'll never communicate. You'll end up hurting a lot of people that you love with your stupid mouth because you didn't take advantage of whatever space. And
my,
that all makes sense.
my daughter gave me some words of advice years ago when I was doing my quote unquote depression, whatever you want to call it, back in 2011. I was hugely pissed off of a certain person at that particular time. I'm not even going to do them the honor of naming them because they're not worth it. And at some point, I'm having a sort of open conversation with my daughter, and she said, and I said about this person, she goes, "Why are you letting them rent space in your head?"
Yeah.
And I said, "What the fuck do you mean?" She says, "They don't even know that you're pissed off. They don't give a fuck. They're not even aware that we're having this conversation. So why are you letting them rent space in your head when they're not even worth the time of the space in your brain?" And it took me a few seconds to go, do you know, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I having this stupid conversation? Why am I pissed off with this person when they don't even know that I'm pissed off? They've got no idea. So why am I even allowing them to piss me off? Why am I allowing them to fucking annoy me in that particular
Right.
way? So yeah, that's super important too. Yeah. Sorry, Mark, carry on.
Well, can I talk a little bit about what I posted just the other
Yeah, yeah,
day,
yeah. I was going to
yesterday?
ask you about that next.
Absolutely,
Go
man.
ahead.
All right.
Absolutely.
This is kind of a culmination of things. And really honestly, there's no excuses for what I was doing. But the moment that you think that you got everything figured out, you're going to find out you don't. And I had an anger situation. Now, I still am flawed. I still have a lot of work to do on myself. I always will. But I learned something, but it may have been costly. And a situation wasn't going in the direction I wanted it to go in, even though it's been the same way for years and it's been perfect. I have no complaints. Why the hell would I want it to change? Then why would I want to get mad when it doesn't? And I tried to control this, and it was not a good decision. And I spun out of control with anger, and I cut deep. And I thought to myself, why am I? I had to go and stop, and I got put in my place big time. And I spent the next couple of days thinking about, okay, am I angry at this person? No, I'm not angry at that person. So what am I angry at? I'm angry at the control I tried to exert over a fucking situation I had no business doing.
Yeah.
And and it all goes back. I'll never make excuses. I did this, and I was an asshole, and I may have cost me something dear to my heart. And if it does, I have to own it, and it is what it is. It sucks, but um, it goes back to everything else. As you're a kid, you don't want to make excuses about that. As a young adult, certain situations, and a lot of times you don't even know you may have scar tissue about something until something like this happens, and you're like, wow, I thought I was good, and it turns out you're not. And we're all human, we're all flawed. Damn, why does it got to be so fucking hard sometimes? All we want to do is all be happy. We work hard at it, but in the end, I've been trying to make it a positive thing. I've been able to put out some positive messages on the forum for people, and I try to do
Yeah.
that a lot. Because what are you going to do? You can't cry, you can't whine, you can't blame. You just got to keep on going forward and figuring it out.
Do you
Every
think
day.
do you think that, you know, going back and reliving it is a negative or a positive for you? I know it's a positive for other people to hear it, but do you think for you it's a negative or positive? Because a lot of times, just like reliving it can like open those wounds. You know what I'm saying? What do you think about
I
that?
think in this case, I think it all depends on the situation. Right now, in this case, I can go back and relive this and revisit it and figure it out because I want to analyze exactly what the hell I was doing and why.
Yeah.
And I think I've got it figured out. I don't want to make the mistake with somebody else ever again.
Yeah.
And if I get a chance, I won't make it with this person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but that'll be, time will tell that. And so, but there's other situations that are like so far in the past, they're dead and gone. Yesterday's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
20 seconds ago is gone. You're not going to get that ever back. It doesn't exist anymore. So some of those things, they don't bother me one way or another.
Yeah.
that,
I mean, I think at your age, but let's say you're 16, 17, 18-year-old listening to this,
oh,
and you went
Yeah.
through something like this at 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, these bad memories and stuff. What do you think that they should do? Do you think they should try and go get some help? Do you think they should try to just
absolutely.
manage it on their, do you think they should try to talk to a family member? What would be the best way to do this? Because it's like there's doesn't seem to be like a lot of stuff like to go talk to a professional. Doesn't seem to be those types of opportunities, especially here in America, where you can a 16 or 7 year old is going to be able to afford to go talk to a psychologist and I'll talk to you for an hour. I charge
Let
you,
me,
you
sorry,
know.
Steve, to interrupt you. I did voluntary youth work, and part of the training, and indeed part of the early advice pre-training, and they made us, the local council made us, even the volunteers had to be qualified just to protect the kids. And so it occurs to me that other kids that might be going through this shit, and of course they're kids, they're teenagers, they're being teens, might help, maybe, but probably not because they lack the experience and they lack the depth of knowledge and knowing how to deal with it. A lot of the kids these days, way more than perhaps I was, and I think even you, Steve, weren't necessarily told enough about who we can go and talk to. What they did do in the youth work stuff was two things really. One is not judgmental, and the other one is pretty much, especially if it was a girl, but even if it was a boy, you always had two people in the room, mostly to protect yourself in terms of if it's a sexual
Yes,
thing or whatever else, for the conversation, but also the two people together making a judgment, two people together that can go to the manager if the manager's not one of those people, and so on and so forth. And not only that, here's a thing that exists now. These things do exist now. They are out there. There are opportunities. In the UK, we have something called Childline, which is meant to be the physical, emotional, sexual protection of kids. And it's a charity you can ring up. But you can just ring them up and tell them you've had a shitty day. You can just ring them up and say, I don't think my mum or my dad's very nice, even if they'd be perfectly normal mum and dad.
Well,
You
I
can
know
just
you
ring up.
guys have that in
Yeah,
Europe, but United States, we don't
yeah,
have stuff like that, buddy. That's why I'm
yeah.
asking
So this
Mark,
is, yeah, maybe Mark, is there
Yeah.
something
And then
like
the
that,
other
perhaps?
problem is too, as a teenage boy, you're taught in a lot of cases, to not say stuff like that, to keep it inside, because literally saying something is an admission of weakness. You know what I'm saying? That's another problem
Yes.
too. So I feel like if Mark had gone into the military and told them, hey, I've got this going on, they would have probably discharged him. Like, okay, well, you can't be in the military. Like, we don't want, weak people in the military, and they probably got him out. Or so it's just
Let
like
me give
it's
you some. Let me give you something else, and this is something I
all
didn't
right. Give it and then let
realize.
Mark talk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. But so the example was one of the kids was kicking off, and it was going to be a problem, and the manager and whoever were going to have to take the kid back to the home, and they said it's a damn shame. And I said, well, he's been a little prick. What the fuck? And they said, listen, he's here and he's been a prick. His home life is horrendous, and they explained that mum and dad were constantly drunk. That if they took him home, they're going to be, slapping him on the fucking doorstep. They're going to be physically abusive in front of these two people. And they said, no matter how bad he is here is 10 times better than being at home because the life that he has there, the situation he has there is just so fucking bad. And of course, I didn't know any of this. I've only been there a few months or whatever. So the lesson for me was it's better to get that stuff off. It's better to be in these situations. It's better to have a place to go to, even if it's, as we obviously, the focus of most of these shows is going to the fucking gym. If the focus of these shows when we go to the gym is then that we talk to someone at the gym or in a social environment, non-judgmental, it's huge because the environment that the person might be dealing with outside of the gym or in a different space could become so fucked up, so fucking whatever, that even us, and I've had this, and I mentioned this on 2 shows, literally people coming up to me, I've got my camera, I'm doing a thing, and they've come up to me, and as we talked about on one show, you saved my life. Just talking stuff for 5 minutes and giving someone 5 minutes of your fucking time. So yeah, sorry, Mark.
Yeah. Yes, that's it, Mark. We're gonna do a mobster show. We're gonna change the show to the mobster show. But let's let Mark give your thoughts, Mark, because we only have a few minutes left. So give your thoughts on what I said, what Mobster said, and then everything we've talked about on this show to kind of help these other teenagers out there or 20 somethings out there, men that are going through this. And look, going like I know me as a kid, if I had gone through my dad and told him, oh, I'm getting bullied at school or something's happening, he would have fucking beat the shit out of me for that. Like, how dare you feel,
Right.
have these feelings? You're not allowed to have those feelings. You've got
Right.
to always have your head up and be an alpha in life. That's how my dad kind of raised me like that. My dad
Well, it's a
definitely.
problem. It's a problem out there right now for young men and young boys, and that's exactly what it is. But there are some strong places. A lot of communities have a really strong network for community counseling too for children and kids that don't involve child protective services. It may be a kid that just needs to talk to somebody, but if they go to child protective services, even if they just need to talk to somebody, they always start looking at parents, even if they're great parents, and you never want that. If they're bad parents, absolutely, but they look at everybody. But like here, there's a community counseling center in Carson City that caters to the community, and they're really good about that. And there's hotlines for kids
Okay.
everywhere.
So
And so
how
there
can
are
they
places.
Google? How can they Google to find one in their community? What do they have to look up?
I would Google, child crisis hotline in whatever town.
Okay.
If it's Sacramento child hotline, crisis hotline. They're there. They're out there. And these kids these days, Steve, they can Google anything. They can
Yeah.
find anything. They can find if they want to find it, they will. I think that there needs to be more of an emphasis on it in advertisement. If you're a
Yeah.
kid,
So what
call this
else?
number.
What can the kid do in the short? Because he's gonna contact that, whatever. But let's say he wants to kind of handle it a different way. What's another way he can handle it that you look back and you're like, you wish he had handled it that way? Is
I'm thinking
going
the church, Steve, perhaps a pastor. What also about things
well,
like
then
your
the
guys,
pastor would get a hold of
boys,
him. So that may.
maybe, but what about the possibly
But like,
Yes.
yeah,
do
I
you
mean, they're
think?
not all like that,
Do you
Steve.
think?
They're not all
Yeah.
like that.
Do you
But I'm
think?
also thinking about the Boy Scouts, for example. Some of these organizations, they are now trained to you're doing this activity, but they're also trained to look out for this stuff.
So
So
so I
it might
knew.
well be, yeah.
So I knew someone. He was having a hard time with drugs, and he reached out to a family member, and it was like an in-law, brother-in-law, or like a uncle-in-law, right? So his aunt's husband, and then the husband told the aunt, and then the aunt told the mom, and then the mom told the grandparents, and it became a huge problem. And he came to me and he said, I thought I could trust this person. And I kind of explained to him, I was like, look, he has to tell your aunt, because if he doesn't tell your aunt and something happens to you and you overdose, he's going to live with that for the rest of his life. You see? So, how do you manage that type of situation where a teenager out there wants to go to a family member, but the family member has the obligation also to tell his parents or grandparents or the aunt or whatever what's going on? How do you manage all that?
Oh my goodness, that's
It's a
a big
tough one, I
question.
know.
That's a tough one because something. There's laws in effect where if a kid comes to you, family member or not, and says this is something going on and it's life threatening or abusive, you got to go to the cops. I know I worked for a youth placement facility for a few years before I got married for about 3 years. And I was out in
Yeah.
the desert in one of these camps and I was a group supervisor out there. And if a kid came to you out there and said, Coach so and so touched me, you were on that radio in about half a second. Because if you didn't,
Yes.
your ass would go to prison for not reporting it. And it's the same thing out in the regular world too. Um, with family members, there's got to be a level. See, that's the hard part. If a kid was really going through something, knew that a suicide was going to happen or abuse was going on or something was happening to him, to go to a family member, requires a level of trust that's a little bit deeper than, let's say, going to your neighbor, because you don't know how a family member is going to react unless you really are close with that family member. Somebody could want to protect somebody doing something bad. Somebody may want to listen and say, oh, you're just overblowing that up, you know? Um, so, wow, that's a big one. I don't know, man. I don't know what they would do or how they would go about that. A pastor, I think Mobster was on a
Yeah,
good
it's
idea
tough.
with
Yeah, I
that.
mean, it completely depends. I mean, look, again, things are different now
School
from what they were.
counselor.
Let me just preface this. Then I'm just thinking, right? So even if the person that you speak to isn't necessarily the most helpful, wise, capable of dealing with your situation, there's a great argument to be made, and this is for that person struggling to do this right now, that you have taken the first step. Imagine you go and speak to someone, I don't know,
Yes.
Joe up the street, and Joe up the street doesn't know how to deal with it. What you and Joe could perhaps do, even Joe's not, no fucking clue, and let's say that he's talking to me, I don't know what to fucking do, Steve. I don't know how I can help you. I go, okay, can we figure it out between us so that we can contact someone? Could we look it up on your computer? Can we Google it with you? Is there someone that we can talk to together? And then Joe can step back and the other person can take over. Literally, the argument here becomes, guys, taking the first fucking step and talking to someone, even if it's not the instant fix that it'd be in a movie, even if it's not some sort of waving of the magic fucking wand, it is a fucking start. It might not be perfect. It might not necessarily be the right person, and you have to go to talk to someone else. But the hardest thing could be making that first step and having that initial conversation and getting that shit off your chest. As an example, Steve, let's imagine that there's some sort of sexual or physical abuse here. Um, the fact that half the family would fucking know puts that other person, the person who's doing it, on notice. Now, every fucker in the family knows you're a prick. Now, every person in the family knows you're doing this stupid shit. Now, that might cause problems in and of itself. Fuck that. I'll take the problems, because then at least that cunt knows that if auntie, uncle, granddad, whatever, will be watching them for seeing how much of a wanker they are and whatever else. And even if they can't fix you, and I use that word loosely, they still come over and sit over here by me, boy. You're feeling all right today. Now people are fucking paying you attention. Now they're actually giving you notice. And so long as it's some sort of dramatic bullshit or made up bollocks, if it's the real fucking deal, then those people in their own way that might not be perfect, might not be some great book of life, page 14, this is how to deal with this shit. It's their way of trying to help you. So it's a step. And there are places you can go to, and there are things you can reach out for. It's just not perhaps as accessible as we'd like it to be. It's not, especially if you live out in the middle of fucking nowhere, after up at Poxy Mountain and all that kind of stuff, and it's a small town and everybody knows your business. That might be really, really fucking difficult. But the internet does help. There is ways of doing it that particular way. Look, we're doing this thing now, this show, for the benefit of the listeners on Zoom. So you could talk to someone that's 500 fucking miles away and half an hour on a fucking Thursday afternoon with someone who knows how to help you.
I think
And
I think too on the forum, if you come out on the
yes,
forum and talk about it and be
yes,
open about it, Mark, talk a little bit about
absolutely.
that.
Um, that was weird for me. Honestly,
How did you feel after? Because you're helping people as well as yourself, perhaps.
um, this last time it felt really relieving. Actually, I felt really good. That felt good the first time. I've never really done that before. I've never thought I would be on a forum sharing personal information other than you know.
Let me interrupt you by asking you why you did, because maybe it's the evolutionary thing that allowed you to do it.
I think so. I felt it was okay. I've
Hmm.
never seen anybody get criticized on this forum
No, not
ever,
for this one. For
ever.
fuck's sake. I'll
And
criticize your squat form, but I won't criticize this ever.
and but you see that, you see it out there, and I just felt safe. Well, I get instant messages from, or not instant messages, private messages from people saying, "Hey, how you doing today?" I've never been experienced just a bunch
Yeah.
of people that
We
actually
have yeah, we
they're
have
sort
a
of
really good
caring for each other.
we have a really good group. I try to go every single day to every log and just give someone a
Wow.
compliment or give them a tip or give them a trick, or if they need to be moved in the right direction, give my opinion on something they're doing with their diet that can be improved. So I try to do that every day. I do it in that way. Other people out there, I know these guys that are doing it because I hear stories like yours, Mark. There's other guys out there, moderators, VIPs, and just vets on the
Yeah.
forum, or just any guys who are actually reaching out and doing stuff like that as well. So I know what's going on. So we have a really good family community. Everyone has their own personalities and does things a little way. Some people are more social. I can tell you're a social guy. Mobster is definitely a social guy.
When I'm
I'm
out and about,
more
yeah.
I'm more of a shy person, so I'm less likely to do something like that, but I'm more likely to go on, openly on their
I think,
blogs.
Steve, you're more likely to do it online and outside in the real world, but you're still helping.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we
Yeah.
wouldn't be doing the show. Listen, there's something, again, guys, what we don't always understand that when we help others, we help ourselves. By him putting that out there into the world, he's helping other people and helping himself. And so it becomes your own reward. Like I said, I know absolutely that I can be selfish or I can be a dick. And if I'm not being selfish and I'm not being a dick, then I'm balancing the fact it's a yin and a yang. I'm putting something out there into the internet. I'm putting something out there into the world that helps me balance from being a complete and utter dick or selfish when I can be dick and selfish. You know what I mean? So you're part of what you're doing here, Marcus. You're allowing yourself to heal, but you're also allowing other people to heal. And as I said, why the fuck would we be judgmental when perhaps we read your story and appreciate it and learn from it? And even if we've never had that issue, we can then take what you've done and pass it on to someone else. So
You
that's
know,
that's the way that we help people. Yeah.
what's really cool, Mobster, is I put this thing out yesterday, and the feedback I received through private messages, through just the forum itself, I got so many different philosophies and thoughts and ideas thrown at me on how to look at things and how to take things, and it was just incredible. It's like this huge, it's this great big ball of information from all over the world, and that the different points of view were just amazing to me, and it really helped me sort a bunch of stuff, and it was really awesome. There were some very, very kind words and some wise words. These guys are smart and they're fun to communicate with, and there's nothing you can't throw out there that you're not going to get some kind of idea on how to work through and sort out. It's great.
We've got a mix of different countries, different ethnicities, different cultures: Indian, Australian, Singapore that we did this morning, who's now Australian, Canadian, American, British. I believe there's Italians, Germans, and Spanish on there. And then they've got the religions and everything, right? But there are some elements of what we do, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's eating clean, whether it's doing PDs, and especially in these kind of situations that we're talking about today, where every single one of us has got something either to add or to take away from that situation. We've all got stresses, we've all got bills to pay, we've all got angst from time to time.
Yes.
And if people from halfway across the fucking world can put a message that just lifts you for 5 minutes, helps you, and maybe helps themselves to give you some words of advice, and vice versa, obviously, as we've done, then that shows that we are, I think, part of the whole thing where they talk about humanity, that we aren't so fucking different. Our cultures aren't so diverse because we are all, and again, it's mostly fellas, all macho motherfuckers going to the gym, trying to look more masculine than we did yesterday, whatever the fuck you want to call it, and then being able to put this stuff out there. And again, it takes 5 fucking minutes, listeners, 5 minutes out of your whole fucking day, out of your whole fucking week to do this.
Yep.
You don't take any time, no effort whatsoever to send someone a message and say, "You're right today, fella."
So
Seconds.
Yep. Yep.
We
That's
only
true,
get
Mark.
24 hours. We only get
Yeah.
tomorrow's not promised. We only get 24 hours. How are you going to live it? I know how I want to live it.
Yep. So
Mark,
Mark,
you would have influenced hundreds of people, just not never mind the ones that have contacted you. Hundreds or thousands would have read your words, and tens have contacted you. So that's how much impact your words are having for
yep.
them.
So
Thank
Mark,
you.
we only have like 1 minute left. So I'm gonna give you the last minute or two, kind of summarize everything we talked about today. Maybe give some advice for people out there. Just summarize your final words, whatever you want to say.
Man, you know something I would just tell everybody, and this is what I'd like to say to everybody who listens to this is, we only get one life. And a lot of times there's parts of that life that are horrible, but there's more great than bad. And if we could all just find something that we can learn from every single freaking day, just a little bit, our lives would be so much better. And maybe we wouldn't make the mistakes that we make. And just live, man. Just live. Memento mori. Just live. Because you're going to die. Might as well live today.
Yeah.
There it is.
Steve?
Yep.
Steve?
Yep. Yeah, Mark, thank you so much for coming on. And anyone out there, you're going through a tough time, feel free to reach out to any of us, Mark, Mobster, myself. Reach out to us. We will, do our best. Mark and Mobster, are they've been around a long time. They've been through a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm almost 50 myself. A lot of people think I'm a lot younger than I am, but I'm almost 50
You,
myself.
you,
So
you nearly said seniors, you motherfucker.
yeah, I know. I was gonna say, I'd say these guys, yeah, they're on
You get 10% at the Sizzler.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. They got that AARP card going. But look, reach out. And there's guys that were younger. There's
Yes,
guys,
yes,
Beamy is a perfect example.
yes,
He's only 40.
yes,
And this guy is
yes.
one of those guys that Mark was talking about who's PMing people and asking how they're doing and giving
Harley
advice.
guys around the same age and doing that every single fucking day, Steve.
Yep.
Van life's been the same age and doing it every
Yep.
single fucking day.
Yep. So don't
Yep.
be scared to come on the forum and just, reach out, get a log going and do it all. So
Don't
this
be
is what we're
afraid
trying
to
to do.
express yourself from
Yeah.
time to time, guys. Put that stuff out there and believe you and me, there's a power to it. A power for you to feel better, a power for you to pass your message on to other people, make them feel better. And even a silly thing for me sometimes, guys, is it can be one of the things that powers me through the gym. Noah was a great example of that when he said raging in the gym and putting that negative energy and just smashing the fucking granny out of himself in the gym. And look where his physique is today. Look where it's made him become. And again, I'm thinking for Mark's purposes here. The person you was before, the angry young man you was before versus the 60-year-old you are now, and putting this message out into the internet for people to learn from, that makes you a better person than you once was. And it means that you aren't the person that your fucking stepdad back in the day could have turned you into, and you didn't stay that way. You've become something else, Mark. So thank you very much for coming on today. Thank you for sharing some of the things that you've shared, which can be difficult. And again, like the guys have already said, come onto the forum, post your logs. Don't be afraid to spill your guts from time to time. We'll try not to be judgmental. We'll try to help you. And there's always going to be people out there looking out for you. And we want your experience to be positive. We want your life to be better. And as Mark said, live today, live tomorrow. Don't live in the past, guys. Thank you much again, Mark. Please note, we are not doctors and the opinions are ours. It is our view based on our experience and views on the topic. A podcast for informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.